The Power of Not Reacting. How to Control Your Emotions, based on Buddhist wisdom. In the diversity of life situations, emotions act as colorful threads, adding depth and richness to our experience. Joy uplifts us, love connects us with others, and even sadness can teach us compassion. However, when emotions remain misunderstood and uncontrolled, they can become a source of suffering. Anger burns us from within, fear paralyzes us, and attachment to the past brings only pain. The ancient wisdom of Zen Buddhism offers a path to mastering emotions, not by suppressing them, but by understanding their nature and cultivating a calm and balanced mind. This practice is not something mystical or unattainable, reserved for monks living in distant monasteries. It is a practical way to a more peaceful and joyful life, accessible to anyone willing to embark on an inner journey. It begins with the realization that true happiness does not depend on external circumstances, but is found within us. It is a process of finding peace amid chaos, joy in the ordinary, and resilience in the face of life's inevitable challenges. The nature of emotions. In our society, there is a deep misconception that to be happy, we must avoid negative emotions or suppress them. However, emotions are much more than just reactions to external events. They can serve as guides, directing our attention to our inner states and our relationships with the world. In Buddhist practice, emotions are viewed as temporary phenomena, like clouds in the sky, that appear and disappear without affecting its true nature. When we understand that emotions come and go, like waves on the surface of the ocean, we begin to see that they are not, in themselves, the source of suffering. True suffering comes from our attachment to these emotions, from our habit of clinging to joy or rejecting pain. Detachment and acceptance of change. Much of our suffering arises from attachment to things we cannot control, outcomes, possessions, even people. We cling to the illusion of permanence in a world that is constantly changing. In Buddhism, detachment is not about cold indifference, but about learning to let go with ease. It is the recognition that all things are temporary and that letting go of them frees us from suffering. It is the ability to love without possessiveness, to strive for goals without attachment to the results, and to accept that change is an inherent part of life. When we learn to let go of our attachments, we free ourselves from the suffering that comes with them. We open ourselves to a deeper experience of peace, joy, and connection that is not dependent on external circumstances. It is important to understand that detachment does not mean giving up goals and desires. It is, rather, a call for mindfulness, that happiness is not the result of achieving something, but the path itself. The practice of mindfulness, returning to the present moment. Imagine your mind as a restless monkey, jumping from thought to thought, either dwelling on the past or consumed with anxiety about the future. This constant stream of thoughts prevents us from fully experiencing the present moment, generating cycles of worry and dissatisfaction. Mindfulness is the practice of gently bringing this monkey back to its place, focusing our attention on the here and now. It is the process of becoming fully immersed in whatever arises in our experience, whether it is our breath, body sensations, thoughts, or feelings, without judgment or resistance. Meditation is one of the most powerful tools for developing mindfulness. Even a few minutes a day spent sitting in stillness and observing the breath can teach our minds to become more aware and less reactive. Over time, we begin to notice the spaces between our thoughts, those precious moments of silence where true peace resides. Mindfulness is not limited to the meditation cushion. It can be cultivated in every moment of our lives, while walking, eating, or even washing dishes. When we are fully present in these everyday activities, they cease to be routine and become opportunities for practicing mindfulness. The role of meditation. Meditation teaches us to observe our thoughts and emotions without judgment, much like we observe clouds passing in the sky. These thoughts and emotions are like waves on the surface of a lake. When we meditate, we create space between ourselves and our experiences, allowing us not to be caught in the whirlwind of emotions, but to view them with clarity and understanding. At first, meditation may seem challenging. The mind is constantly distracted, and thoughts about the past or future arise. But the key to success in this practice is gentleness and patience with oneself. Every time you notice your mind has wandered, simply bring it back to the breath or the chosen object of meditation. Over time, regular meditation practice helps develop inner resilience. We begin to better recognize moments when our emotions are boiling over, and instead of reacting automatically, we learn to acknowledge their nature and allow them to pass through us without causing harm. Experiencing emotions with equanimity. Imagine a still pond, its surface reflecting the sky with perfect clarity. Now, imagine a gust of wind disturbing the water, creating ripples and distorting the reflection. Our minds are often like this pond, agitated by a constant stream of thoughts and emotions. Equanimity is the practice of cultivating a calm, stable mind, like the still pond, undisturbed by the winds of change. This does not mean that we should become emotionless or indifferent to the world around us. It means we learn to fully experience our emotions without being swept away by them. We observe them with a sense of spaciousness and non-judgment, allowing them to arise, pass, and dissolve like waves in the ocean. The path to inner peace. Developing the skill of not reacting is an ongoing practice that requires patience and self-awareness. It is a path that teaches us not to suppress our emotions, but to understand their nature, recognize their impermanence, and allow them to pass through us without resistance. Through meditation, mindfulness, and detachment, we can free ourselves from the suffering that often arises from our emotional reactions. We learn to see emotions as temporary phenomena that come and go, like waves on the surface of a pond. Buddhist wisdom offers us a practical way to achieve inner peace and happiness, accessible to all. It is a path to a life filled with calm, joy, and deep connection to the present moment. The power of not reacting. How to control your emotions through Buddhist wisdom. In today's fast-paced world, where stimuli are constant and conflicts arise from even the smallest triggers, the power of not reacting can be a life-changing skill. Buddhism, an ancient spiritual tradition that emphasizes inner peace, offers profound insights on how to control our emotions and navigate life's challenges with grace. Central to this wisdom is the understanding that our reactions often fuel the chaos we seek to escape. Learning to manage these reactions can transform our experience of life. This article delves into the Buddhist perspective on controlling emotions, highlighting how the practice of mindfulness and non-reactivity can lead to greater inner peace and emotional resilience. The nature of emotions in Buddhist thought are neither inherently good nor bad. They are simply mental states that arise due to various conditions: joy, anger, sadness, fear. These are all transient emotions that pass through the mind like clouds moving across the sky. However, problems arise when we become attached to these emotions or identify too strongly with them. For instance, when we feel anger, we often believe that we are angry, rather than recognizing that we are experiencing anger. This subtle distinction is crucial in Buddhist teachings. By learning to observe emotions without attachment, we can avoid being swept away by them. When we react impulsively to emotions, we reinforce their power over us, creating more suffering in the process. The chain of reaction. One of the core teachings of Buddhism is the concept of dependent origination, paticca samuppada, which explains how phenomena arise in dependence on other phenomena. In the context of emotions, this teaching is especially relevant. Our reactions are not isolated events. They are part of a chain of cause and effect. When something unpleasant happens, it triggers a thought, which then triggers an emotional response, which in turn often triggers a reactive action. This chain is what keeps us trapped in cycles of suffering. For example, consider a situation where someone insults you. The insult triggers a thought, "I am disrespected." That thought gives rise to anger. The anger may then lead you to lash out in return, thus perpetuating a cycle of hostility. Each link in the chain strengthens the previous one, creating a cycle that's difficult to break. But Buddhism teaches that we can interrupt this chain at any point, primarily through mindfulness and awareness. The role of mindfulness. Mindfulness, sati, is the practice of being fully aware of the present moment without judgment. This non-judgmental awareness allows us to observe our emotions as they arise without getting caught up in them. When we are mindful, we can see the initial spark of an emotion, but instead of reacting immediately, we create space between the emotion and our response. Mindfulness helps us recognize emotions for what they are, temporary mental states. By observing the emotion instead of reacting to it, we can choose a response that is more aligned with wisdom and compassion, rather than habit and impulse. This pause between stimulus and response is where our freedom lies. In this space, we can break the cycle of reactivity and act from a place of greater clarity. For example, when anger arises, instead of immediately reacting, we can acknowledge it. "Ah, here is anger." We can then observe how it feels in the body, the heat, the tension, and how it affects our thoughts. This simple act of observation weakens the hold the emotion has over us. It also allows us to choose a response that is more measured and thoughtful. The power of non-reactivity. One of the most profound aspects of Buddhist practice is the cultivation of equanimity, upekkha, which is the ability to remain calm and balanced in the face of life's ups and downs. Equanimity does not mean indifference. Rather, it is the capacity to experience emotions fully without being overwhelmed by them. It's the ability to let emotions arise and pass without clinging to them or pushing them away. Non-reactivity, a key component of equanimity, is the ability to experience emotions without immediately reacting to them. In Buddhist practice, this is often referred to as the practice of non-attachment. When we are not attached to the outcome of our emotions, we can observe them without being controlled by them. For example, when a negative emotion, like anger or frustration, arises, non-reactivity allows us to acknowledge the emotion without immediately acting on it. Instead of suppressing or indulging the emotion, we simply allow it to be, understanding that it will pass. This ability to sit with difficult emotions without reacting is a powerful form of emotional intelligence. Letting go of the self. Another key teaching in Buddhism that helps in controlling emotions is the understanding of anatta, or the concept of no self. According to this teaching, the self we cling to, the one that feels anger, fear, pride, or desire, is not a permanent, unchanging entity. Rather, It is a collection of ever-changing experiences, perceptions, and mental states. When we believe in a solid, unchanging self, we are more likely to react to situations that threaten this self. For example, if someone criticizes you, the immediate reaction is often one of defensiveness or anger because the self feels attacked. But when we understand that this self is not a fixed entity, we can take such situations less personally. This understanding allows us to loosen our attachment to the ego and to the emotions that arise when the ego is threatened. By recognizing the impermanent nature of the self, we can reduce the intensity of our emotional reactions. Practical steps to control emotions. While Buddhist wisdom provides a deep philosophical framework for understanding emotions, it also offers practical tools to help us control them. Here are a few steps rooted in Buddhist practice that can help cultivate emotional resilience. Mindful breathing. When emotions start to arise, focus on your breath. This helps anchor you in the present moment and creates space between the emotion and your reaction. Label the emotion. Simply naming the emotion, "This is anger," or "This is sadness," helps create a sense of distance from it. It reminds you that you are not the emotion, you are simply experiencing it. Body scan. Pay attention to how the emotion feels in your body. Is there tension in your shoulders? A knot in your stomach? By focusing on the physical sensations, you can stay grounded and prevent the mind from spinning out of control. Cultivate compassion. Instead of reacting with anger or frustration, try to respond with compassion. This doesn't mean being passive or accepting harmful behavior. It means recognizing that everyone is struggling with their own emotions and acting from a place of kindness rather than reactivity. Meditation. Practice. Regular meditation helps train the mind to become more aware and less reactive. It strengthens mindfulness and equanimity, making it easier to control emotions in daily life. The power of not reacting lies at the heart of emotional freedom. Through mindfulness, non-reactivity, and an understanding of the transient nature of emotions, we can learn to control our responses and navigate life's challenges with greater wisdom and compassion. By embracing Buddhist teachings on emotions, we can break free from the cycles of reactivity that cause suffering and cultivate a deeper sense of peace and equanimity in our lives. The mind as a tool, shifting perspective on emotions. In Buddhist philosophy, the mind is seen as both the source of suffering and the key to liberation. Our emotions and reactions arise from the mind, shaped by our perceptions and beliefs. In moments of distress, the mind often exaggerates threats, distorts reality, and magnifies emotions, leading to reactions that may not serve our best interests. However, this same mind, when trained and understood, can be the source of peace and wisdom. One of the fundamental ideas in Buddhism is that suffering, dukkha, is a part of life, but we can change our relationship with it. Emotions like anger, jealousy, or fear are often rooted in attachment and aversion. Attachment to what we desire, and aversion to what we wish to avoid. When we cling to positive emotions or resist negative ones, we create the conditions for ongoing suffering. But by observing our emotions without attachment, we can learn to work with them rather than be controlled by them. This perspective shift is central to Buddhist wisdom. Instead of seeing emotions as enemies to be fought or suppressed, we learn to view them as signals or teachers. Every emotion carries information about our inner state and the way we perceive the world. Anger, for example, may highlight unmet needs or unresolved conflicts. Fear may point to our vulnerabilities or the areas of life where we feel out of control. By listening to these emotions mindfully, we can gain valuable insights without being overwhelmed by them. The importance of emotional awareness. A key principle in controlling emotions is cultivating emotional awareness. This doesn't mean becoming detached or numb to feelings, but rather developing an intimate understanding of how emotions arise, how they affect us, and how we can choose to respond. One powerful practice in Buddhism is Vipassana meditation, also known as insight meditation. Through this practice, individuals observe their thoughts and emotions without judgment or attachment. The goal is not to suppress emotions, but to see them clearly and recognize their impermanent nature. Vipassana allows practitioners to witness emotions as they emerge, develop, and eventually fade away. This process reveals a truth often overlooked. Emotions are not permanent. They come and go, like waves on the surface of the ocean. In daily life, this insight is transformative. When we experience a strong emotion, whether it's anger, sadness, or even joy, mindfulness helps us remember that this feeling is temporary. Instead of reacting impulsively or clinging to the emotion, we can let it pass naturally. This realization alone can reduce the intensity of our emotional responses and prevent unnecessary suffering. Understanding the second arrow of suffering. A famous metaphor in Buddhism speaks of the two arrows of suffering. The first arrow represents the initial pain or discomfort that arises from life's inevitable difficulties. This could be a personal loss, a conflict at work, or a sudden illness. The second arrow, however, is the one we shoot ourselves when we react to the initial pain with resistance, blame, or self-pity. The first arrow is unavoidable. Life is full of challenges. But the second arrow is optional. It represents the additional suffering we create through our reactions. For instance, if someone criticizes us, the first arrow might be the sting of the criticism itself, but the second arrow could be our internal dialogue. I'm worthless. Why does this always happen to me? Or, they have no right to say that. These thoughts fuel our emotional pain and often lead to further reactions: anger, resentment, or self-doubt. Buddhist wisdom teaches that while we cannot always avoid the first arrow, we have the power to avoid the second. By recognizing our tendency to shoot this second arrow, we can stop ourselves before we make the situation worse. This is where the practice of non-reactivity becomes especially important. When we learn to pause and observe our emotional reactions without feeding them with additional thoughts, we break the cycle of suffering. Compassion for yourself and others. Another vital component of controlling emotions is the practice of compassion, both for yourself and others. Compassion in Buddhism is not simply a feeling of pity or sympathy, but a deep recognition of our shared humanity and the understanding that all beings, including ourselves, seek happiness and wish to avoid suffering. When we face difficult emotions, it's easy to be harsh with ourselves, thinking, "I shouldn't feel this way," or "I need to get over this." But this self-criticism often makes emotions stronger and more entrenched. Instead, Buddhism encourages us to meet our emotions with self-compassion. This means accepting our feelings without judgment and offering ourselves the same kindness we would extend to a friend in distress. For example, if you're feeling anxious, instead of berating yourself for feeling that way, you might say, "It's okay to feel this way. Anxiety is part of being human." This simple act of self-compassion softens the emotional intensity and allows us to navigate our feelings with greater ease. Compassion for others plays a crucial role in controlling emotions. especially in challenging situations. When someone acts in a way that triggers anger or frustration, it's easy to react with hostility. But Buddhist teachings encourage us to look deeper, recognizing that the other person, like us, is acting from their own emotional conditioning and struggles. This doesn't mean excusing harmful behavior, but it allows us to respond with understanding rather than adding fuel to the fire. The practice of loving-kindness meditation, metta, is one way to cultivate compassion. In this meditation, you silently repeat phrases such as, "May I be happy, may I be peaceful," extending these wishes first to yourself and then to others, including those with whom you may have conflicts. Over time, this practice helps dissolve feelings of resentment and fosters a sense of connection and understanding, making it easier to control emotional reactions. Equanimity, the balance of the mind. At the heart of controlling emotions is the cultivation of equanimity. In Buddhism, equanimity is a state of mental calmness and composure, especially in difficult situations. It is the ability to remain centered, regardless of external circumstances. Equanimity doesn't mean indifference or apathy, but rather a balanced, wise response to whatever arises. Achieving equanimity involves accepting both the highs and lows of life without getting overly attached to either. When things go well, we enjoy them, but don't cling to them, knowing that everything is impermanent. When things go poorly, we face them with resilience, understanding that this too will pass. One of the main challenges in developing equanimity is overcoming the mind's natural tendency to grasp at pleasure and avoid pain. In Buddhism, this is referred to as craving, tanha, and aversion, dosa, two forces that pull us out of balance. Craving leads us to cling to experiences we find pleasurable, while aversion drives us to push away experiences we find unpleasant. Both of these reactions create suffering because they trap us in a cycle of wanting things to be different than they are. Equanimity offers an alternative, the ability to accept life as it is, without being pulled into emotional extremes. It is the realization that our peace of mind does not depend on external conditions, but on our inner state of awareness. The practice of letting go. One of the most powerful teachings in Buddhism is the practice of letting go. Letting go doesn't mean giving up or resigning ourselves to fate, but rather releasing our attachment to outcomes and expectations. Much of our emotional turmoil arises from the desire for things to be a certain way, whether it's a relationship, a job, or even our own emotional state. When we cling to the idea that things must unfold in a particular way for us to be happy, we set ourselves up for disappointment. By learning to let go of these attachments, we free ourselves from the emotional turbulence that comes from unmet expectations. Letting go requires trust in the natural flow of life. It involves surrendering the illusion of control and accepting that change is the only constant. In moments of strong emotion, letting go can feel like a relief, a release from the mental tension of trying to control everything. Conclusion: embracing the journey of emotional mastery. Mastering our emotions is not a destination, but a continuous journey. Buddhist wisdom offers profound insights and practical tools for this journey, helping us develop the skills of mindfulness, compassion, and non-reactivity. By embracing these teachings, we can learn to control our emotional responses and live with greater freedom, peace, and clarity. The power of not reacting, grounded in mindfulness and wisdom, allows us to move through life with a calm and open heart. Instead of being tossed around by the waves of emotion, we become like the deep ocean, steady, peaceful, and undisturbed by the surface storms. Through this practice, we find not only emotional balance, but also a deeper connection to ourselves and the world around us.